This is the tutorial for Concept 19, Skill 3. Now we're converting units in the customary system. So the customary system is just another measurement system, kind of like the metric system. However, the metric system made it a little bit easier because it was based on powers of 10. So those prefixes told us how many meters, liters, or grams we ended up having. And they were either going to move the decimal to the right or to the left, depending on whether the number was getting bigger or smaller. Well, we have the same sort of thing where if the number is getting bigger, like for instance the units we're going from a large unit to a small unit, we end up multiplying, making the number bigger. Or if we're going from a small unit to a large unit, we're going to end up dividing because we're making the number smaller. We still use that concept. However, we don't have the same consistency of powers of 10 here. So we have different conversion factors that we have to memorize. So we have different units for length, weight, and capacity. So length, we have the foot, but we also have inches, we have yards, and we have miles that we're going to be dealing with. And in weight, we deal in either pounds or ounces. Capacity, there's lots of them, but the main ones that we're going to be looking at here are gallons and quarts. But we also have cups and pints and so on, and ounces as well. So we need to remember that there are 12 inches in a foot. We need to remember that there are 3 feet in a yard and 5,280 feet in 1 mile. We also need to memorize 16 ounces equals 1 pound and 4 quarts equals a gallon. So we're going to memorize these and be able to solve or convert from, for instance, how many feet are in 3 yards. Well, what we need to know is this. We first of all need to know the conversion factor. And so we see that 1 yard is 3 feet. Now, how are we going? Where are we going from? We're going from feet to yards. So that means we're going from a small to a big unit. So from small, how many feet? I'm sorry. We're starting at yards, so we're going from a big unit to a small unit. So if we go from a big to a small, a large to a small, that means we multiply. And so that's why they did this. They took the conversion factor and they're multiplying by it. So 3 times 3 makes 9. So 9 feet in 3 yards. Well, to go the other way, how many feet are in 24 inches? So now we're going from a small unit of 24 inches, to feet, which is the larger unit. And so that means that you're going to end up dividing by the conversion factor. So we need to know the conversion factor. 1 foot is 12 inches. So you just take your number, 24 inches, divide by 12, and that makes 2. So 2 feet in 24 inches. So we're going to use this conversion factor here, and I'm going to go ahead and copy that. So let's go ahead and bring this here and Control C, and let's go over to the other page here. And we're going to use this conversion factor to help us solve some of these problems here. So go ahead and stick it here for now. And so let's take a look at the first one here. Number 1, it says, how many convert 48 ounces to pounds? And so notice what we're going from. We're going from ounces, and ounces is here, 16 ounces in 1 pound. So you can see how the pound is bigger than the ounces. So we are going from a small to a big unit. And so right away we should know what we're doing. So the way I remember it, because sometimes it's kind of confusing. When do I multiply? When do I divide? Well, it's hard to remember what's small, what's big, and all that kind of stuff. So what I would end up doing is, let's do this. Let's draw a little picture again. And let's start on the top. Remember how you had staircases before? Well, we can't use the same staircases to help us figure out where the decimal point goes, but it can help us with the same concept. So you get the bigger on top. The bigger unit is going to be on top. The smaller unit is down here on the bottom of the stairs. And that kind of makes sense. You know, you're up higher when you're up on the top of the stairs. You're lower when you're on the bottom. Now notice what's happening. If I go from a big to a small, I'm having to go downhill. Downhill from left to right. So that means I'm getting smaller. So the unit's getting smaller, but look which way the decimal is going to end up going. The decimal is going to move to the right. Now, it's not that I can just move the decimal, but what that means is when the decimal goes right, that means it's getting bigger. And so when the number's getting bigger, that means you need to multiply. That means multiply. And that's what we're going to remember. And vice versa. So if I go from the small unit to a big unit, that means the decimal is going to the left. That means I'm going from the decimal is getting smaller, or decimal goes left. And when the decimal goes left, that means it's getting smaller. We've got a smaller number, and typically when we're dealing with smaller numbers, that means we're going to end up dividing. So that might help you out. So bigger to smaller, we got to remember to multiply. Smaller to bigger, you're going to end up dividing. So what are we doing? 48 ounces, 2 pounds. We're going from a small unit to a bigger unit. And so that means we are going to, and that's what they ask here. So are you going from smaller into larger, or larger to smaller? Well, we're going from smaller to larger. And so that's what we're doing there. So what are we going to end up doing? Well, that means we're going to end up dividing. And so what number are we going to divide by? Here's where we have to know this conversion factor right here. So we're going to remember that 16 ounces is in 1 pound, so that's what we're going to divide by. And so we just go ahead and do the division. 48 divided by 16, and that gives us 3 pounds. So let's take a look at the next one here. So now we're going from quarts to gallons. Oh, and so now we know that there's 1 gallon equals 4 quarts. So what are we doing first? Are we going from a big to a small, or a small to a big? Well, this is smaller, and we're going to a larger unit. And so if I'm going from small to large, I'm making the number smaller. So that you see how the decimal is going to the left, it's going to get to a smaller number. So I need to divide by the conversion factor. So I'm going to divide by, well, there's 4 quarts in a gallon, so I got to divide by 4. That gives me 4, so it's going to be 4 gallons in this case. 5 feet, how many inches? Well, I'm going from a big unit to a small unit. So when I go from big to small, that means I'm going to make the number bigger. I'm going to move the decimal to the right eventually. And so that means I multiply by the conversion factor. There's 12 inches, it says, in 1 foot. So when I multiply those numbers, I get 60 inches. Well, feet, that's actually a small unit compared to this other one of miles, which is our big unit. So that means I'm going to end up going from small to big. So that means divide. So I need to take that 10,560 and divide by 5,280. And that's the number of feet in 1 mile. So when I go ahead and do that, it looks like that only goes in there 2 times evenly. Well, 10 miles, miles is the big unit, to feet is the small unit. So that means big to small means that I'm going to end up multiplying. So 10 times by, there's 5,280. I was thinking of inches for a second there. So let's go ahead and change that. So 5,280 feet in 1 mile. So when I go ahead and multiply by 10, that's nice. It just moves the decimal 1 space to the right, or just in this case adds that 0, 52,800. And the next one, 100 pounds to ounces. So pounds is my big unit, and I'm going to a small unit. So whenever I go big to small, there's going to be a lot more of the smaller ones than the bigger ones. So that means I have to multiply. And so I'm going to end up doing 100 pounds times by 16 ounces in 1 pound, which gives me 1,600. It moves the decimal 2 spaces, or adds 2 zeros. So here I'm going from gallons to quarts. Gallons is the big unit, and quarts is the smaller unit. So whenever you go big to small, you end up multiplying. So we have 16 times by 4. And so in this case, I have 64 quarts in 16 gallons. So that's what you're doing on this lesson. Good luck.